Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look, of course, at the Anaheim Ducks. So it is time to talk about this team out in Anaheim, because it has been, to say a rough season is kind of understating it. It's been a rough year for the Anaheim Ducks this season. They have been one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League, definitely in the running for Connor Bedard, which I think teams around the Western Conference are kind of shivering at the thought of the Ducks having Isaac Lundestrom, Mason McTavish, Trevor Zegras, and a Connor Bedard or a Matvei Michev. It's kind of a scary thought, but it is a possibility here with how the Ducks have played so far this season. So when you look at the Anaheim Ducks, we have to start with some of the just egregiously bad stats for the Ducks so far this season. And the first one is, so through the first 30 games of this season, and the Ducks have played a couple games since then, but through the first 30 games of the season, one regulation win against the Rangers in Anaheim. Okay? Yeah. They are 7-20-3 with a pace of hitting 46 points by the end of this season. They have 7 wins, which is the 7th least through 30 games played ever, 5th least ever in NHL history. The first team to 20 regulation losses this season, which is kind of makes sense. The worst goals for and goals against in the entire league, and that has since changed slightly, but still the point remains. And a minus 60 goal differential, which is the worst by minus 24. So it's been a rough start, to say the least, for the Ducks. And we kind of knew the Ducks would have a regression after a kind of surprisingly good season last year. Not the case this year for the Ducks. It's been all downhill for this team. And this team currently, at the making of this video, sits at 9-20-3 on the season. They have just 21 points, 8th in the Pacific Division. So the Anaheim Ducks, where have things gone wrong? And of course, how I always like to start these, it's always going to start with the injuries. And there has been a fair share of injuries. So John Moore has been out with an undisclosed injury. He will miss training camp, and he is on injured reserves. We have not seen John Moore this season. Jamie Drysdale, back at the end of October, had a shoulder injury, and he will be out 4 to 6 months. That's a tough blow for the Anaheim Ducks blue line. John Gibson, and this was the other day, December 13th, he had an undisclosed injury and will not play in Saturday's game against Edmonton, and that was this past weekend. So he has not played in the last couple of days. Derek Grant has been out since the beginning of this month with a lower body injury and has been placed on the injured reserve. Isaac Lundestrom also at the beginning of this month, December 1st, had a finger injury, and the Ducks announced that Lundestrom will be out 6 weeks with a fractured finger. So a couple of tough losses there. You look at, Grant and Lundestrom, 2 center depth guys, Drysdale and Moore on the back end. And of course, your starting goaltender, John Gibson, having questionable injuries and potentially missing games as a game time decision goalie. So things are a little bit up in the air right now for the Anaheim Ducks, despite the fact the team is already at the bottom of the standings. You look at the top point producers for this team. Troy Terry, once again, leading the way. He's got 28 points this season. Trevor Zegras is right there. Mason McTavish has been playing extraordinarily well for the Ducks, despite how things have gone. He still played well, again, his rookie season on a not-so-good team. The Anaheim Ducks have had a lot of struggles, but there's somehow something good to take away from this, and that is that the Anaheim Ducks are going to sell pretty hard this summer. And this recent report is kind of showing you that the Ducks are willing to make some moves. So the first one comes from Ducks GM Pat Verbeek and Oilers GM Ken Holland had dinner together Monday. Verbeek has been scouting the last couple of Oilers games. Michael Russo believes that is because the Ducks are inquiring about forward Jesse Puljujarvi. So Jesse Puljujarvi, if you guys don't know the context, was a former 4th overall pick by the Edmonton Oilers and has not panned out. And I wouldn't necessarily call him a bust, but he's borderline bust for the Edmonton Oilers. And maybe a change of scenery, maybe more ice time with the Anaheim Ducks on the power play would maybe spark that kind of that fuel in his game. And there has been some reason to believe that something could come of that in the near future. So it's one of those things where people are kind of looking from afar, what could the Ducks end up doing? And, you know, to kind of add more fuel to the fire there, the Ducks are going to look very different by the trade deadline. And you may be wondering, well, why would that be, Kevin? Why would they look different? First of all, I mean, their historically bad season is kind of a catalyst to that, but also they have a certain number of guys that are due for a new contract. And with a new GM in town, and Pat Verbeek, there's reason to believe that the Ducks could make some pretty seismic changes to this team. Now, I was very excited when the Ducks announced that Pat Verbeek would be their next general manager. I think that was a great pickup for the Ducks and is kind of just a guy that fits what they want to do. And when I look at this team right now, you have a couple of pretty important contracts coming up this year. Trevor Zegras is coming off of his ELC this summer. Maxime Comtois and Troy Terry are going to be coming off of their contracts. They will be RFAs with arbitration rights this coming summer. Couple of defensemen. John Klingberg obviously signed that 1-year ticket this past summer. Kevin Shattenkirk, Dmitry Kulikov, Nathan Boya, and Simon Benoit are all going to be free agents next summer. So there's going to be a lot of change to that blue line in particular. And past this season, it's Cam Fowler, Jaro Vakainen, Colton White, and Jamie Drysdale. So everybody else is fair game. And that's the other big one. Jamie Drysdale and Trevor Zegras, both their contracts are going to be paid this coming summer. They will be due for new deals. So the Anaheim Ducks, right there with those two guys, have some pretty big contracts to take on this coming summer. So the Ducks aren't going to have the available cap space to say if they wanted to keep a John Klingberg or keep a Shattenkirk. They're going to have to spend that money to keep these superstar players like Zegras and Drysdale. Not to mention, listen, you know, there's always that question about who's behind John Gibson. Lucas Dostal and Ole Eriksson Ek are both behind him right now. And again, I think that's because of his injury status as well. But you look at the goaltender that's really drawing the interest for the Ducks right now is Lucas Dostal, who's a guy that is projected to be the next John Gibson. So if the Ducks decide to go that direction, he's due for a new contract this year, right? So it's going to be an important season for the Ducks to decide what they're going to do. And Pat Verbeek came in at a very good time because he is going to have the ability to kind of do what he wants to do. You know, that's why I think like the job in Vancouver was such a bad one, really, in the sense for what's his name, Patrick Alvin and Jim Rutherford to come into, because they have to clean up the mess of the previous GM in Jim Benning, right? They have the JT Miller contracts, the Brock Besser contracts, and all of that stuff they have to deal with that they didn't necessarily do. The good news is here for Pat Verbeek, he's actually kind of set up for success. He has an opportunity to kind of put his stamp on the team and kind of build the stability where he wants to build it here for the next 5 to 10 years, right? So this is a really important season for the Ducks in the sense that they are going to have a big reset. And I would expect John Klingberg to be gone. I would expect all those veteran defensemen, Kulikov, Shattenkirk, John Moore. I would expect all of those guys gone. And the Ducks to try and bring in a pretty big name winger if they can. Because I think that there is the possibility, yeah, of course there's a possibility they draft someone, right? Whether they get a Bedard or a Michev or a Fantilli. But you can't really bank on that. And I think that getting a project like Puljujarvi could be a low-risk, high-reward kind of situation for the Ducks. And I think the Ducks will continue to explore those options. But let me know what you guys think down below. What do you guys think of the Anaheim Ducks? Do you guys think we are in store for a pretty big rebuild there? As it kind of continues from where they've left it off last year and the year before that. I think that last year was kind of fool's gold for the Ducks, kind of thinking that maybe they were ahead of schedule. We're seeing them regress back to where they were 2 years ago. And this Ducks team is, they might be the new, not necessarily the dumpster fire of the league, but just a really bad team on paper. And we're kind of seeing that right now. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time.